Welcome back to another episode of Questions History. We don't rewrite, recreate, nor do we reimagine history. We simply ask the question that tells a cinematic documentary. In today's Questions episode, we ask 5 questions to what role Jamaica played during World War I. Journey. When people talk about World War I, they talk about the trenches of Europe, the mud, the machine gun, the millions dead. They remember Britain, France, Germany, but rarely ever Jamaica. An island thousands of miles away from Europe, still trapped under the colonial rule, still recovering from slavery, still trying to define its own identity. And yet, when war erupted in 1914, Jamaicans crossed the ocean to serve an empire that did not fully see them as equals. Some fought, some carried supplies, some dug trenches, and some healed the wounded. Yet, many never returned. This is not just a story about a war. It is a story about loyalty, identity, sacrifice, and a small Caribbean island trying to find its place in an ever-changing world. On August 1914, Europe descended in chaos. A conflict began with political assassinations and imperial rivalry quickly exploded into a global war. Because Jamaica was still a part of the British Empire, the island was automatically connected to Britain's war effort. And although the fighting was taking place thousands of miles away, the effects reached Jamaica almost immediately. Recruitment posters appeared. Meetings were held. Young Jamaican men were encouraged to volunteer for their king and its empire. For many Jamaicans, this was complicated. On one hand, Britain represented colonial authority, but on the other hand, military service promised opportunity, adventure, income, status, recognition. Some believe that if Black Caribbean men fought loyally for Britain, they would finally earn equal respect within the empire. Thousands volunteered. Many joined the British West Indies Regiment, formed in 1915. Others served in labor battalions, transportation units, and support services across Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. They left behind families, farms, churches, and communities, sailing in a war many barely understood. And while Jamaica did not become a battlefield, its people became a part of one of the deadliest conflicts known to man. Today, this story matters because it reveals something often forgotten. Jamaica was never isolated from world history because even as a colony, its people helped shape global events. So, the year was 1914 when World War I began. Jamaica, under colonial rule, had no choice but to join Britain's war effort. Thousands volunteered. Many joined the British West Indies companies. They volunteered as builders, healers, and some soldiers. But for the first time, Jamaica became a part of global history. But now that we have examined question 1, let's now move to question 2. What is the background of the conflict and its major players? Journey. To understand why Jamaicans joined the war, you first have to understand colonial Jamaica. The island was still deeply unequal. Political power remained mostly in the hands of the colonial elites. Economic opportunities were limited for ordinary black Jamaicans. And yet, despite these conditions, many Jamaicans felt connected to Britain. British culture influenced schools, religion, law, and government. Young people grew up hearing about duty, honor, and serving the king and its empire. So when Britain called for support during the war, many answered. One major military unit became the symbol of the Caribbean participation. The British West Indies Regiment. Men from Jamaica and across the Caribbean joined together under the British command. Some imagined glory. Others simply hope for a better tomorrow. But another important Jamaican figure already represented service abroad long before World War I was Mary Seacole. During the war, early Crimean War, Seacole became the first and the most famous for caring for wounded soldiers near battlefields. Despite racism and rejection, she traveled independently and helped many soldiers survive horrific conditions. Her courage became legendary. And by the time World War I arrived, Mary Seacole had already shown the world something very important, that Jamaicans could contribute far beyond the Caribbean. Meanwhile, Jamaica itself was changing. After emancipation, workers and migrants from places like India had arrived in the Caribbean under British labor systems. These migrants slowly transformed Jamaica into a more culturally diverse society. The island was becoming part of a much larger imperial world. In summary, we saw where colonial British Jamaica was still very unequal. We also saw that the British had a strong influence on Jamaicans. The music, the culture, law, government, food, pretty much the way we speak today. We also saw where Mary Seacole, who had made her name on the Crimean War scene, also was making a wave as a humanitarian in World War I. This influenced a lot of migration, but now that we have established question 2, now let's delve into question 3. What escalated Jamaica's participation in World War I journey? As the war intensified, Britain needed more manpower, more soldiers, more laborers, more support. And Jamaica's role expanded. But reality quickly replaced romantic ideas about war. Many Caribbean soldiers discovered that they were not treated equally. Some were denied combat positions, others were assigned dangerous labor instead. Digging trenches, carrying ammunition, building roads under enemy fire, and racism followed them overseas. Black Caribbean troops often faced discrimination from white officers and even regular soldiers. Promises of equality began to feel hollow. Still, Jamaicans continued serving. In freezing climates they had never experienced. In battle zones far from home. In conditions that shattered bodies and minds. And slowly, something began to change. Many Jamaican veterans started questioning the empire itself. If they were willing to die for Britain, why were they still treated as second-class citizens? That question would outlive the war. In summary, we saw where the colonial British Empire was in every recruitment drive. They started by enlisting posters. Also, we saw where our Jamaican soldiers faced racism in Britain. And we saw where they eventually questioned the British Empire. But now that we have answered question 3, let's move on to question 4. What were the key moments and impact? Journey. One of the most important turning points was the overseas deployment of Caribbean troops. For many Jamaicans, this was the first time leaving the island. They witnessed Europe devastated by war. Entire cities destroyed. Thousands dead. And despite their sacrifices, they often remained invisible in official accounts. But the war also changed how Jamaicans saw themselves. Returning veterans brought back more than uniforms and medals. They returned with new awareness, new expectation, new frustrations. Some had traveled across the continent and realized the world was much bigger than the colonial Jamaica. Others became politically conscious after experiencing discrimination firsthand. The war exposed contradictions within the empire. Britain spoke about freedom and civilization while denying equality to many colonial subjects. These experiences helped inspire future political movements through the Caribbean. The seeds of nationalism were growing. Not instantly, but quietly and permanently. In summary, we saw where racism exposed the contradiction of the British Empire. We also saw where returning veterans were influenced by political thinking. And we also saw that World War I helped sow the seeds of nationalism. But now that we have answered question 4, let's delve into question 5. What were the impact and consequences of the war? Journey. The war ended in 1918. But for Jamaica, the consequences continued long after the guns were silent. Veterans returned home carrying physical and emotional scars. Some struggled economically. Others struggled psychologically. But many carried new ideas about dignity, equality, and self-determination. The war helped reshape Jamaican identity. It connected the island to more deeply global politics and world events. And it remained the same. It reminded Jamaicans that their sacrifices mattered, even when history overlooked them. Figures like Mary Seacole became enduring symbols of courage and compassion. And the service of the Jamaican soldiers helped lay the emotional foundation for future independent movement across the Caribbean. Because once people risk their lives for freedom abroad, they often begin demanding it at home. And that was the simple truth. In concluding our topic, what role Jamaicans played in World War I. We tend to see that these were people who crossed oceans. They faced racism. They fought courageously. And they returned home forever changed. And maybe that was the real legacy of the war. Not just Jamaica fought in history, but the fact that history had allowed Jamaicans to become themselves, to know who they truly were. Now, if you have reached this far in this video, it would have meant that you or somebody you know might be interested in videos like these. For more in our series, questions, history, please leave a comment, like, share, or subscribe. Until next time, walk good.